What's up guys, it's Josh from KeepItTechie, and today I want to do a quick video showing you guys user management on Linux using the Useradd command. Now this is a long overdue video. I tried to do a whole bunch of very basic commands earlier on in my channel, but I realized this is one of the commands that I actually missed. I've shown it multiple times in multiple videos where I had to create accounts for specific reasons, especially when you're talking about applications like an Apache server. You may need a account to manage that, but I haven't done like a broad overview of the actual command, so you guys can reference back to that if you need to understand how to actually use the Useradd command. And then also this command is heavily used when taking those certifications that allow you to get in and become a Linux administrator by understanding how to work with Linux servers. So I figured I'd go through and show you guys this command, and we can walk through it. That way you can get a base overview of how to actually use it. So let's go down and get started. Okay, cool. So I'm SSH'd into a Ubuntu 20.04 server, and the first thing I want to do is go down and go to the man page for the Useradd command, and let's type that in right fast. So let's type man and then Useradd, and this is a very old command. It's been around forever, since the beginning of Linux and Unix days, so it's just been updated and maintained. You know, it's the basic Useradd command or management command for users in Unix/Linux operating systems. And just to break it down, let's read a little bit about it. It says the name is Useradd, create a new user or update default new user information. And then right here is the synopsis. It says Useradd, then the options, you know, and the account, and a few other ways of running it. But let's go down and read the description. It says Useradd is a low-level utility for adding users on Debian. Administrators should usually use add user instead. And just to explain what add user is, it's basically a command that sits on top of Useradd. It's more simpler to use than the Useradd command because some of the default things that you have to specify when you're using Useradd is automatically done when you run add user. But I want to show you this command because it's the first command that was actually created. Add user kind of makes it simpler, but Useradd is a way to understand how the system actually works. And if we read a little more, it says when invoked without the -d option, the Useradd command creates a new user account using the values specified on the command line plus the default values from the system. Depending on the command line options, the Useradd command will update system files and may also create the new user's home directory and copy initial files. And the initial files, that kind of comes from the skeleton directory. There's a directory on a Linux server or a Linux computer that you can modify to put specific files when the user's home directory is actually created, and it'll copy those files over to any new user that you create on the system. I just kind of wanted you to explain, I kind of wanted you guys to understand that. And then if we go down here, these are some of the options. There are plenty of options in here. Some of these I won't cover, like for instance the expired date. This is a way to actually disable an account at a specific date, and this is good. Like let's say you're hiring a contractor to work as a web designer or something, and you only want to have him have access from X date to X date, and you want his account to expire at that point and won't allow him to log in. Well, this is a way to do that, but I won't go into that command or that option. It's not that hard to do. I just don't want to make it too complicated for people that are new to Linux. And then if we go down, it's a little bit more options down up in here that you can use, but I'll go through a few so you can get a brief overview of how to actually use it. So let's go down and quit this, but you always want to use that man page as a reference if you have any questions when you're creating accounts. But the first thing I want to do is actually create an account, a base level account, using the Useradd command. So let's go down and type this in now, and you have to use sudo unless you're on the root account. And as you can see, I'm on the Zcash account, which is a pseudo account on the system, which I created when I did the installation of the server. But let's go sudo useradd, and then I want to create an account called KIT. So let's press enter, and this will create that account that we specified. Now, just to kind of explain, a lot of things are not done with this account. You have to use a lot of these options. That's why the add user command came along later on, because certain things are done on the account, and you have to understand that when using the Useradd command, that a lot of things are not done yet with the account. Now, let me do one other thing with the account so you guys can understand this is part of the process. But let's type sudo passwd, and I'm sure you guys have seen me do this in the past, but this is basically how you set the password on the account. But let's go down and do that now. That way, I just wanted to show it to you guys, and let me get my mouse out the way so you guys don't get distracted. But let's press enter, and this will create that password like I stated, so you can put whatever password you want onto that account. Boom. And this is a base account that we created. It doesn't have sudo access. It's just a normal account on the system. And just to show you a little bit information about the account and break it all down, I want to show you where it actually puts the account information at. It puts the account information under the password file, which is in the etc directory. So let me cat that out right fast so you guys can get, you know, an understanding of what it actually does and what the information is in there, so you guys can understand what it means. Now let's grep out that account, because I don't want to pull in all the information. I just want to look at that KIT account. So let's type grep KIT, press enter, and that'll pull just that one line with that information on this account. Now when you use the Useradd command, or this is the information that it puts in the password file. And just to break it all down for you, the first thing it puts in is the user account, or the first column is the user account, and that's what the user would use to log in. And then the second column is actually the password, and this basically just means that it does have a password, and it's located in the shadow file, and the shadow file is encrypted passwords associated with the account. That's why it doesn't just show the password here. It's in the shadow file and it's encrypted in that location. And then the next thing it shows is the user ID, which is right here. So, and just so you understand, the user ID is generated every single time. It'll generate it based on the accounts that are already created. There is a specific range that it goes through, and that range for new user accounts is from 1000 on up. And right now it started at 1001 because I already have an account created on the system. And just to explain the other ranges, because there are other IDs that are below 1000, but they're specified for specific things. Like for instance, 0 is always reserved for the root user, and then from 1 to 99, that's reserved for like predefined accounts, and then also from 100 to 999, that's reserved for like system accounts and groups. So that's why it always starts at 1000, and that's the reason that this account has a user ID of 1001. And just to show you guys this right here, this is the group ID, and the group ID starts at 1000 as well, and it'll count up from there, and it's always the same as the user ID unless you go in and specify something different. But it creates a user ID or a group ID when it creates the user ID as well. Now the next thing it shows up here is the home directory, and this is where I was talking about how the Useradd command doesn't do certain things that you think it would. It does not create the home directory. It specifies the location of the home directory, or where it should be, because that's the default. The default is always to put a home directory under the home directory, or a folder with the username under the home directory under root. But if you ls the home directory right here, you ls this directory, you won't see a folder for KIT because the Useradd command doesn't do that by default. You have to tell it to do it. And then also this last part right here is the default shell, and as you can see, it's just set to bin SHA, which is shell. But let me show you guys the difference between the KIT account and the Josh account. So if we run that sudo cat command, but let's specify Josh, just so we can see the difference. You'll see right here that Josh was created, it has a password, and then also this is the default starting user ID, which is 1000, and the default starting group ID for that user is 1000. So that's why this one has 1001. It'll go in sequence. And then also we'll look right here. This is another field that we actually didn't specify. There is a user information field, and it just by default, like I used the installation process when I did this, it put the user information right here within this location. That's the location that it goes into. And then after that, you'll see I have a home directory, and then my default shell is bash. So just to kind of explain it all to you so you guys can get a good understanding of how it actually works. Now, one thing I want to do is delete that KIT account and show you guys how to actually create a home directory for it. So let's use another command. This is sudo userdel, and let's create that delete that KIT account. Boom. It doesn't take too long. You know, it goes through and removes it out of those files that it modifies to create the account. Now let's go down and create that account again, but this time I want to specify something. I want to tell it to create a home directory, and so that option is -m, and this will allow it to create a home directory in a specific in the home directory. It'll create that folder for you if it's not there. So let's go down and press enter, and this will create that account again, as well as the home directory this time. So let's press enter. Boom. Cool. And then so let's cat out the password file and then type in KIT again, so we can pull that information again, and you'll see that it has that same user ID and group ID. And the reason it does that is because when we deleted the account, it released that ID back to the system, basically saying you can create another user account in sequence, and it'll just reuse that user ID. So that's why it has the same user ID. And if I would have used a different account name or login account name, it would have still used 1001. And I just wanted you guys to understand that it will reuse those user IDs once you delete an account out. Now, as you can see, we still have that same bin shell, and I want it to look like the Josh account where it uses bin bash. I want the default shell for bin bash. So let me show you guys how to actually do that. I'm gonna delete this account again, but I'm gonna put these commands in tandem or together, and let's go through and delete that KIT account again and create it again. But this time we're gonna add another option to it, and this is to actually specify the shell. So if we go back in front of the account name that we want to create and type -s, and then we can specify the shell, and it has to be the absolute path, just like it shows it here, bin or /bin/bash. It has to be the absolute path. That way it'll add the correct shell, because that way it'll know the specific location. So let's type /bin and then bash and space, and then we're going to create that same exact account. And one thing I forgot to do before we do this, actually, let's go back down. I forgot, once you create that user account or that home directory and you use the user delete command, it does not delete that home directory. So let me delete that home directory right fast. So let's go sudo remove, and then let's use rf just in case it has some files in it. But let's go home and then KIT. That's that home directory that we created, and I forgot to list that out just to show you guys that it actually creates it at that point, but it's there. So let's go down and delete it right fast. So that's gone. Now let's go down and create that user account specifying the default shell, And let's go back up to this command where we created it and go on and type in the default shell. Well, it actually has it there already. Now let's go on and just run this command, and like I said, the -m will create that home directory, because I would have got a warning if I would have ran it before deleting that home directory. So I want to avoid that, so you guys can see it go through as if it's a new account. But -m will create a new home directory, and then -s, and then the absolute location, or the full location of the shell that we want to use, and then the user account. So let's press enter, and we shouldn't get any errors. If it gives you an error or a warning, you did something wrong. But let's go on and cat out that file again, the password file again. You looking at the KIT account, and as you can see now, it has the home directory that we want, which is home/KIT, and then the shell, which has been bash. And then, like I said, it will reuse those same user IDs as well as group IDs. Now let me show you guys how to actually specify a different home directory from the default location. Now this is a very simple command. I'm basically running the option -d, and I'll show you guys that right now. Let's type sudo, and what I'm gonna do is create another account, and you'll see the pattern. I'm gonna create an account based on the options that I'm using. So let's go sudo useradd, and then let's go -d. And the reason I want to do this is because, let's say you have a web designer that's coming in, and you want him to only have, or you want him to have his home directory under the default Apache web directory, which is var www, and you want him to have a home directory underneath there. And actually, one thing I forgot, I'm gonna use -m. That way it'll create the home directory under the directory that we want to create. Well, actually, we're specifying that directory, and it'll put in there that this is the directory that we want to specify. And let's go on and specify that directory. And I want to, like I said, I want to set it up under the var directory. So var www, and then we want to create a directory called KIT web, and that'll be the home directory for a KIT web account, and that's the account name that we're going to use. So KIT WEB, and I apologize, I actually mistyped up here, but KIT web is the directory, and then KIT web is the user account. And this will specify, like I said, a different location for the home directory than the default location, which is typically under that home directory under root. Now let's go down and press enter right here, and this will create that account. And since we're using sudo, that actual directory var www is owned by root currently, but since we're using sudo, it'll go down and create that account for us, or that user directory for us under var www. Now let's go down and look at this account again, just like we did the other ones. So KIT web, let's grep it out of the password file, and as you can see, it has that directory. So under var www KIT web, and as you can see, it created a new user ID because it's a new account. That's the account login, and that's the location, and then that's the shell, which I should have specified being bash, but just to go on and do it, you can use the default, and then you can also change the default, and I won't go into that. I may make that for another video, but this gives you an idea of how to actually do that, or specify a different home directory location. Now the next thing I want to do is show you guys that you can actually create a specific user ID versus using the one in sequence. Let's say you want to create another one and you want to specify that ID, that user ID. Well, let's go on and create another account, and like I said, it'll be in sequence, kind of where whatever I'm doing with the Useradd command, then I'll name that account that. So let's go sudo useradd, and this option is -u, and then we can specify whatever we want. So let's go, it has to be over 1,000. It can't be one that's already used. So since I know that 1002 is the most recent one, but let's specify something higher. So let's go 1050, And let's go down and create the account. So let's name it KeepItTechie and press enter. And then let's run the command so we can see what it looks like. And I apologize, I typed it in wrong, but ID. So cool, there we go. And as you can see, we specified the user ID, and by default this command will specify the group ID as the same number as the user ID. So that's pretty cool right there. Now the next thing I want to do is show you that you can actually assign a user to a specific ID. Now that ID, that group ID, has to be already created, and so let me show you guys that right now. So we're gonna run that same command, but I'm gonna create a different one, and I'm gonna name this account GID on the end of it. So it's basically KIT. I'm gonna specify the ID, and I'm gonna specify the group ID to something different. So let's create the user ID for this one as 51, and then now I want to specify a specific group ID for this one, and that option is -g, and then we have to put the group ID. And so I'm gonna type this in, but I'm actually not gonna run a command yet. So 997 is the group that I want to look at. And just to show you guys how I got that information, I'm gonna show you where to get it from. So you can actually go to the group directory, or it's actually a file, a group file located under the etc directory that stores all the group information. So I'm gonna cat that out right fast. Cat and then etc and then group, and press enter, and that'll list out all the groups on the account. And basically what I was going to do is add it to this MySQL group that's already created on the system. Now, so let's go down and run that command now, and there it is already. And let's go down and run this command and see what happens. Boom. Cool. So we didn't get any errors, so that means it ran successfully. Now let's look at this account again. Let's go in and grep it. So GID on the end of it is the name of it, and press enter, and that'll bring up that account that we just created. And as you can see, it has a different user ID from the group ID. We specified that it had a group ID of 997, which if you look up here, that is that MySQL group. So I just wanted to do that so you guys can see that you can actually specify a different group ID when you create the account. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you guys is actually how to create an account that does not log into the system. And the reason you may want this is for some type of service. So let's say you have an application that you're building, and you want to create an account that actually runs that service, but you don't need it to actually be able to log into that account. It's specifically for an application or some type of service. Then you can create an account that doesn't log in, and the way you do that is by specifying a specific shell. Now this is a different shell, and it's located under a different directory. So let's go down and create one right fast and just show you guys how to actually do it. But let's type sudo useradd, and then by specifying the default shell for an account is -s, and then the location for it is basically under sbin. So sbin, and then there's a file in there called no login. And then let's create that account. So I'm gonna just specify a specific name, KIT no L, or no login, and press enter. And then we'll also look at this account as well so we can see what it actually looks like. So let's go in and actually grep the KIT no login account and press enter. And as you can see, this is the default shell, and that basically lets the system know that this account cannot log in, but they can actually do things on the system based on whatever you specify on the server for this account to do. But you can't just go to a terminal and log in. It will say this account doesn't have access to log in to the system. So we're good to go. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, I wanted to do a base level explanation of using the Useradd command. This should help you if you're trying to get into systems administration, as well as taking one of those certification exams for Linux administration. But if this is your first time at this channel, please like and share the video if you can. I'm trying to build up this channel just to put information out about Linux and trying to switch people over to Linux, just to show them that there's a different operating system out there that they can use from Windows and Mac OS. But again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, leave comments down in the comment boxes below, and of course, keep it techie.